Hello everyone, welcome to this session on fund administrator. In the previous sessions, we have seen what is a fund, that is a collective investment scheme. We also seen who is a fund manager or an investment manager. In this session, we look at the fund administrator. What are the different activities that has been undertaken by fund administrator? Now, typically like any public company or a private company, the fund or a collective investment scheme also need to run its operations. And one of the main entities or the participant which is responsible for running the day-to-day operations of the investment fund are fund administrators. Now, what does the fund administrators do? A fund administrator does the daily core activities which is required to run the operational activities of a fund. Now, let's look at where exactly a fund administrator or what it is role. Like any investment bank or a security trading organization, a fund also has the three main divisions: front office, middle office, and back office. Now, when I talk about a front office for a fund, typically it consists of fund managers who actually takes care of investment activities, analysts and researchers who basically does the analysis of market and provides the input for the fund managers to invest in the securities. Then we have a middle office. The middle office basically takes care of compliance, they take care of profit and loss reporting, etc. And we have a back office. Now, in the back office, they do the day-to-day operations of the fund, such as like managing investments, reconciliations, reporting, etc. The fund administrator exactly comes as a part of a back office. Now, let's look at what are the activities we have seen. Like front office. Front office consists of fund managers who basically takes about the investment decisions. They decide about asset allocation, what to buy, when to buy, etc. So, when I talk about the middle office perform variety of functions in a fund. One of the functions they do is trade support. So, what is that trade support? Basically, the fund managers decide about the investment opportunities. They buy or sell the securities, and the trade support team basically supports this buying and selling by taking care of by taking care of activities like trade confirmation, trade settlement, trade reconciliation, etc. And the middle office also responsible for risk monitoring, in the sense they monitor the risk which are undertaken by this. Basically, they perform a shadow NAV. Shadow NAV is they perform a parallel NAV and they see what is the performance of the fund. Also, they look at the what is the pricing, like calculation of NAV and publishing of NAV. And the third important thing is they take care of reporting. So, the middle office of a fund typically tracks the profit and loss which is undertaken by a fund on a daily basis or on a periodic basis. Example, like for a mutual fund on a daily basis and for a private equity fund on a quarterly basis, and publish this result. So, these are some of the activities which are taken care by the middle office. Now, let's look at in detail what are the administration functions of fund administrator. First, a fund administrator is responsible for calculation of net asset value. Now, net asset value, which is also known as NAV, right? So, basically it talks about the what is the per unit price of a fund. Now, the NAV is calculated for the fund on a periodic basis. Like for a mutual funds, it is calculated on a daily basis. For a hedge funds, might be calculated on a weekly or a monthly basis. And for a private equity fund, this is calculated and published on a quarterly basis. So, the fund administrator is basically responsible for calculation and publishing of NAV for the fund. Second, they are responsible for investor reporting. Now, they need to publish the fund releases the results on a quarterly or annual basis. Quarterly results are unaudited results of a fund, which is typically results which shows the what is the financial profit and loss statements, balance sheet, cash flow statements, etc. These need to be published across to the investors. And on an annual basis, the audited results of the fund, okay, which includes profit and loss account or the statement of operations or the balance sheet and the cash flow statements which are prepared and audited at annual level, need to be published. So, the fund administrator is responsible for publishing of these reports to the investors. Third, they are responsible for filing of reports. So, in various countries, there are a lot of regulations, and these regulations require them to publish the various, they need to file various reports. For example, as per Dodd-Frank Act and EMIR Act, the entity is supposed to file the trade and transaction report on a regular basis. So, as and when they do a report, they do a trade, they need to publish this trade trade reports to the regulators. This is one of the activities they take in. And there are certain activities, for example, let's say for a derivative specific funds, they need to do some specific derivative specific reportings which need to be done. For example, if they are dealing in the structured derivatives, this need to be published accounting on a timely basis. So that is also been taken care by fund administrator. Then payment of fund expenses. The fund incurs a lot of variety of expenses. For example, they need to have management expenses, they need to pay a transfer agent expenses, they need to pay custodian expenses. All these expenses are taken care by the fund administrator. Means they are the entities which is responsible for calculating and payment of these expenses. Then a fund administrator is also responsible for settlement of trades. When I say settlement of trades, let's say a fund buys equities or a fixed income securities for which they have to pay in cash, or if they sell, they need to deliver the securities. So this settlement, purchase, taking care of settling of cash on securities are taken care by the fund administrator. Now, some of the other things apart from what they do, right? One, preparation and filing of funds, prospective and other filings. So, there are a lot of there are a variety of regulatory reports which are required. For example, in US, SEC requires some of the important filings which need to be done by the funds. The fund administrator ensures that all this mandatory filings or regulatory filings are filed with the regulators on a timely and periodic basis. The fund is also, the fund administration also responsible for tracking the fund performance. Now, they calculate various ratios. For example, they calculate what is the internal rate of return, and they calculate other returns, and they publish this on a periodic basis. This helps them to track and compare the funds. Next is calculation of payment and calculation of payment and payments, calculation and payment required to the transfer agents. Now, the transfer agents which manage the subscription returns for a fund, when they liaise with the fund administrator, the fund administrators are liable for making this payment. Okay. Example, let's say that an investor actually purchases the units of a mutual fund. So what they'll do is they bring in cash to the fund. This transfer agent pass on this cash to the fund administrator, who in return pass them to the investment managers. Similarly, when the fund holders want to redeem, so they approach the transfer agent approach the fund administrators, and fund administrator approach the fund managers, who liquidate or sell the assets in the market. They raise the capital and distribute back to the investors. So the fund administrator is also responsible for making settlements for subscription and redemptions. Last is they are responsible for the liquidation and dissolution of the fund. If the fund decides to wind up, they takes care of all the winding up activities. So these are some of the administration functions of the fund administrator. Now, these are some of the top fund administrators: Citi, BNY Mellon, Brown Brothers Harriman, Fidelity, Goldman Sachs, Citco are some of the fund administrators, some of the top fund administrators in the industry. Now, let's look at what are the fund administrators' roles specifically when it comes to fund accounting functions. Like how accounting is mandatory for companies or organizations, accounting is also mandatory for the funds. So, administration role when it comes to fund accounting is they are responsible for preparation of financial statements, like example P&L, profit and loss statement, balance sheet and cash flow. They are responsible for this. They need to do a daily reconciliation. That is another thing. They are responsible for profit and loss account. So these are some of the activities which the fund administrator manages in terms of fund administration. Now let's look at some of the investor reportings. So the fund administration is also responsible for variety of investor reports. They need to do, for example, investors need a portfolio. they need a portfolio performance report. Then the fund administration is the one who supplies all this information to the investors. So these are next is we'll talk about the role of a transfer agent. Now, transfer agent is one entity who work very close with the fund administrator. Now, you need to note that the transfer agents are not part of the fund administration, but they are separate and independent entities. Now, typically what transfer agents do? Transfer agents, they do the bookkeeping function, in the sense they are responsible for opening and managing investor accounts. Means these are investors who want to invest in the funds. And transfer agents also responsible for managing subscription and redemption, that is buying and selling of mutual fund or any fund units. And the transfer agents are responsible for distributions, means they are responsible for distributing the dividends or return back to the investors. So one of the work of the fund administration is to work very closely with the transfer agent and ensure that the distribution, subscription, redemption, and distribution task does not get affected. So these are some of the tasks which are actually performed by the fund administration. Thank you for your time.